Is this, that we need to identify the pillars of American exceptionalism. We need to refurbish those pillars. And the identification of them become the things that we've inherited from clear back in the origins of Western civilization. Mosaic law flowed through Greek and Roman law. The Magna Carta that was signed in 1215 that established individual freedom from the monarch or the despot, that no subject could be, let's say no one other than a serf at that time could be punished arbitrarily. They had to have the right and the protection of the rule of law. And we have these guarantees in our Constitution of freedom of speech. And I'm exercising it now, Madam Speaker, and I encourage all to do that. If we stopped exercising freedom of speech, we would eventually lose it because it would be defined away from us. Freedom of religion fits the same category. If we don't exercise our freedom of religion, it becomes redefined away from us. How about freedom of the press? And I would submit, Madam Speaker, that those who abuse freedom of the press, those who do not have journalistic integrity, are undermining our First Amendment right. If every newspaper out there printed things that they knew were dishonest, if they just drove purely a political agenda on the front page, on the side where they're held accountable for journalism, or in their commentary when they print falsehoods as fact, it undermines all of our freedom. Because when someone abuses a freedom, they diminish that freedom for all of us. Now think in terms of if that's hard to understand for some folks, Madam Speaker, I put it this way. If everybody went out there and abused the Second Amendment right, it wouldn't be long and we wouldn't have the right to keep and bear arms regardless of what the Constitution says. We have to utilize those rights. We have to exercise them in a responsible way. The abuse of God-given rights, the abuse of these rights especially in the Bill of Rights, undermines the rights that we have. But we do have freedom of speech, religion, and the press and assembly. And if we stopped exercising them, we would lose them. And we have the right to keep and bear arms. Not for hunting, not for target, not for self-defense, and not for collection. All of those four reasons to keep and bear arms are, I'll say, they're additional rights. It's just the bonus that comes along with it. Because our founding fathers understood that a well-armed populace was a protection against tyranny. And I agree with that and defend the Second Amendment because that is what keeps us from defending ourselves against tyrants. But as you can go on up through the Bill of Rights, the right to property in the Fifth Amendment, nor shall private property be taken without public use, without just compensation. The Kelo decision took that phrase out of there for public use out of it. I think one day a Supreme Court, if we raise an adequate objection, will have to go back and revisit the Kelo decision. It was an unjust decision that didn't reflect the language in the Fifth Amendment. But property rights is another core of American exceptionalism. Without these rights, freedom of speech, religion, and the press, and the Second Amendment rights to keep and bear arms, without property rights, without being tried by a jury of our peers and a right to face our accusers, without the concepts of federalism and these enumerated powers in the Constitution that being reserved for the Congress and the balance of them that revert to the states or the people respectively, without those components, we would not emerge. We would not have emerged as the country that we are. And we can't sustain ourselves as the country that we are to be if we don't protect those pillars of American exceptionalism. And in the core of those pillars of American exceptionalism is, as I said earlier, the rule of law. And when the rule of law is usurped by a king or a despot or a president of the United States, it diminishes us all, and it diminishes the potential destiny of the United States of America. And we've seen as the President of the United States has decided that he will enforce the law that he sees fit, and he will not enforce the law that he doesn't agree with. And it's clear in a number of ways, Madam Speaker. The President suspended No Child Left Behind. He won't enforce that. He essentially has waived it off the books. Now, he took an oath to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. That is in the Constitution, and it's a requirement. He took the oath. He understands it. He taught constitutional law. But he simply set aside No Child Left Behind. It isn't the issue that I'm advocating here. It is a president must take care that the laws be faithfully executed. Behind that, he suspended welfare to work. In the middle 90s, there were 3 times that President Clinton vetoed the welfare reform law and finally signed it, took credit for it. Okay, that's politics. But one component of that was welfare to work, and only one. Of all of our more than 80 different means-tested welfare programs that we have, or a minimum of 80 different means-tested welfare programs that we have, of all of them, there's only one, Madam Speaker, that requires work. That one is the TANF program, the Temporary Assistance in Needy Families. And it says in there, it specifically prohibits the president from suspending or waiving the work requirement. The president did so anyway. And sticking with this rule of law that has been so damaged by our president, it's also true with immigration law. The immigration law that requires that people who are in violation of it be put into the process for deportation, the president has decided he won't do that. Now, it's one thing to have prosecutorial discretion. I agree that the executive branch has to be able to decide which highest priorities are there for the resources of law enforcement. But when the executive branch, that prosecutorial discretion is always on an individual basis, not on a group basis, not on a clear-the-board basis. But look what the president has done. He has issued a memorandum. It's actually a memorandum that was written by Secretary Napolitano of the Department of Homeland Security. It said, we're not going to enforce immigration law against people that, and the short version would be, people, is my time expired?
Gentleman's time's expired.
If I could ask the indulgence to make a concluding sentence here, and I just didn't see that coming, Madam Speaker. And so I'm here to endorse the rule of law and stand up and defend the Constitution. I appreciate your attention, and I yield back the balance of my time.